The Sega Genesis is one of the most infamous consoles in history for being the start of many legendary series, although nowadays it's really only Sonic that lives on because Sega treats a lot of their franchises like expensive pieces of shit. But for also being the first console to be a real competitor to Nintendo, who had essentially had a monopoly over the console industry for a few years at the time. But as it's always been, hardware becomes quickly outdated as technological advancements are made and things get cheaper, so the Genesis was out of date only a few years after its release. But you know, it's expensive to put so many resources into a brand new console, especially the one that you have currently is so successful, so Sega decided to choose the cheap route and develop an add-on for the Sega Genesis which doubles the amount of magical bits. But what the hell are bits? Anytime you hear anything about retro consoles, the term bits is always thrown around. I mean, the amount of bits are literally used in the name Nintendo 64 bits, so here's my quick infomercial explaining to you what the hell bits are. A bit is essentially the smallest unit of data used in computing, and when used in video game consoles it's used as a CPU register size. So in the simplest way I can explain it, the more bits, the more data a CPU can work with. And bits were a huge part of video game marketing back in the day, and while rarely laid out exactly what the hell a bit was, it was shown that the more bits, the better the system, basically. Which was technically true, as each new generation would commonly double in bit size, meaning that every generation would kind of double in power and graphic fidelity in a way. Of course, this also depended on factors like system memory and file size, but still. But here's a fun fact, the computer that you are watching this on uses a 64-bit CPU unless you work for NASA or something. But when first booting up the computer, it will only use 16 bits of your CPU for backwards compatibility with older systems, meaning that your $2,500 gaming computer at the end of the day is just as powerful as a Super Nintendo when being first boot up. So anyway, instead of making a whole brand new console, Sega released an add-on for the Genesis which allowed it to run 32-bit games at the cost of it not being as powerful as an actual 32-bit console, as it still had to use a 16-bit console as its base, and also looking like a huge tumor when put on the original Genesis. I mean, seriously, who thought this was a good idea? Oh, and also, Sega shot themselves in the foot, as just a month later, the original PlayStation released, and we all know how that ended. At least they don't have to worry about Nintendo. Wait, even the Virtual Boy outsold this thing? Well, despite everything, one of the main ways Sega tried to market this brand new system is by releasing a game in their Cash Cow series very early on, being Knuckles Chaotix, kind of like what they did with Sonic CD on the Sega CD. Now, it actually makes a lot of sense why Sega would put a Knuckles spin-off on here, as at the time, Knuckles was kind of like second in charge of the Sonic series, being Sonic's main rival. His design was meant to clash with Sonic's, being red contrasting with Sonic's blue and having flat hair compared to Sonic's wild, spiky hair. He was first introduced in Sonic 3 as the main villain, essentially being Eggman's muscle behind his operation, and was later expanded upon in the next release, Sonic & Knuckles, where he took on the title role and was also more of a fleshed out character where he wasn't just a villain, but an ally to Sonic and Tails. So it makes complete sense that Sega would want to build up his character even more by making a complete spin-off as a headliner for their next console thing. But actually, this wasn't originally intended to be a Knuckles game. The original concept for this game came from a tech demo known as Sonic Crackers, very interesting title by the way, which focused on multiplayer, which is more or less a footnote for the previous Sonic games. Although, I will say, Sonic 2 multiplayer, kind of underrated. The demo has Sonic and Tails connected by a tether, and you need to use the physics of the tether to throw around Sonic and Tails to reach the end of the level, all 2 in the demo. Yeah, obviously considering that this is a tech demo, there's not a ton of stuff to do here, it really just works as a proof of concept for what could be a full game. The game eventually shifted away from being a normal Sonic game and became a Knuckles game, as explained before. The main goal of this game, outside of actually selling 32x units, which I mean, it's good to set multiple goals, was to expand the Sonic universe, showing that it does not completely revolve around Sonic, so introduced a whole new rogues gallery into the series, this being the Chaotix. Now, we all know the Chaotix. Characters like Vector are some of the most popular characters in the series, but I think it's easy to forget how far back in the series they were introduced, and that's because of how weird they are compared to their more mainstream characterization first seen in Sonic Heroes. Each Chaotix, whatever, has their own form of gameplay, keeping with the trend of having each playable character having a significantly different gameplay style, but who the hell even are these guys? The returning characters in this game are Knuckles, duh, and Mighty, who first appeared in Sega Sonic the Hedgehog back in the arcades, which is a pretty weird pick to bring back. In future appearances of the Chaotix, like in Sonic Heroes, Mighty is never a member, so it's not like they were setting him up to be a part of the group, or maybe they were, they just changed their mind last minute. I don't know. I mean, the actual reason he was brought into this game is kind of boring. Since the game was originally meant to be a Sonic game, they wanted to reuse Sonic's character data without actually putting him in the game. The same thing was done to Tails, so he's just transferred into Knuckles. Yeah, so basically in this game, Sonic is Mighty, Tails is Knuckles. Not sure what this implies for the lore. But the first actual new character here is my personal favorite, Vector. Oh yeah! Vector's a new move compared to everyone else in the Sonic series, where he's able to do a short dash in midair. It's not all that useful, and all the other characters are much more powerful, but it's pretty fun. I mostly just like him for his sick-ass idle animation. I love the cassette player, I think they should bring that back. The next Chaotix, I think, is Espio the Chameleon, who is one of the most creative movesets here, who has the ability to stick and climb to walls, being very useful for this game's more vertical styled level design, which I'll get into. I gotta say, with most of the praise for Sonic sprites going to games like Mania and Battle, Espio here has one of my favorite aura radiances to any classic Sonic game character ever. Look at this dude. I mean, he changes color. Who else does that? He just has by far some of the most interesting animations given to him, like a spin dash where he spins like a top or a dreidel. This guy here has some hella aura, that's for sure. And of course, you have the final Chaotix, my absolute least favorite, Charmy B, who is canonically like a fucking toddler. Yet, Charmy is kind of just dumb and plays nothing like the rest of them, being able to fly. But instead of going like Tails and having a more limited speed, Charmy is fast as hell and he never gets tired. Charmy is by far the most overpowered character in this game, being able to fly at the same speed of everyone else running, and ignoring about 75% of the platforming here, which I'll get to later, can be appreciated in some instances, but why did you guys add this guy? But I mean, come on, getting Charmy is basically like getting one of those infinite Tanuki suits in Mario 3, so at some point you're basically just skipping the whole level, or just completely glitching out because this game's going way too fast and all the other characters can't catch up, or you just die anytime you try and kill an enemy because you obviously don't have the reaction time to do anything when the game looks like one of those make yourself trip YouTube videos, and only real ones know what I'm talking about there. Having so many playable characters in one game with different styles opens up possibilities for a lot of moveset combinations, so it makes the game very different to experience during each new replay, except there is a feature baked into the game that does completely ruin that, but we're not going to get there yet. I'm just saying it's a good way to shake up the gameplay. And of course, none of this is to take away from the lasting impact the Chaotix have had as side characters in the Sonic franchise. They always show up in spin-offs and things like character murals, and I do think outside of the main group, Vector has to be one of the most popular Sonic characters out there. I mean, he's a big-ass crocodile who likes money and listens to music. Someone please put this guy on Echo 2K. And these dudes' appearances in this game must have had somewhat of a lasting impact even at the time, because Espio shows up in Sonic the Fighters, which is a game I actually happen to enjoy quite a bit. And ignore the fact that the rest of Chaotix aren't here, I like this guy. But I'm mostly talking about these guys as they appear in this game, as this is how they are portrayed in this game. So I'm not really going to go into detail these characters' reimaginings in Sonic Heroes with the whole detective agency thing. So as it stands right now, these guys are kind of lame in this game, and that's okay. I still like them. Except you. However, their future appearances do question the canonicity of Knuckles' Chaotix, as in Sonic Heroes is explicitly said that the Chaotix do not know who Eggman is, even though they've already fought him with Knuckles in the past, so why would they not know who he is? Whatever. Look, let me believe that these two games can exist in the same universe. It makes things a lot simpler. And anyway, trying to make sense of this series nowadays is a complete waste of time, because now we got people like Minecraft Steve and Hatsune Miku here, and I wouldn't have it any other way to make it clear. As explained earlier, the prototype Sonic Crackers is kind of a proof of concept for the gameplay seen in this game with the whole rubber banding mechanic. To go more into detail of this feature, you and whoever your partner is are connected by this magical tether thing. I've always kind of wondered what this thing even is, because in the cover it's shown to be more of a rubber band type thing, but when displayed in the game's sprites it's shown as more of a magical entity keeping the two together. But the band mechanic allows for more extra movement compared to the regular Sonic games. Under the right circumstances, you're able to stretch two characters away from each other and let go to see them fling at speeds not seen before. And I would be lying if I said this wasn't one of the most dumb fun mechanics ever seen in a Sonic game when it decides to work. Yeah, even with this being on more powerful hardware than the bare Genesis, this band mechanic is one of the most finicky things to ever get working, and that's specifically shown off with how these levels are designed. To prevent you from just flinging yourself to the end of the level and beating it in under 10 seconds, these levels are built vertically compared to the normally horizontal levels seen in, well, any normal game. Now, this is actually a very interesting, creative way to design levels for a game, because especially at this time, not many games did stuff like this. But the issue here is that the main mechanic of this game and the way the levels are designed kind of clash together. You're essentially put in control of two different characters at once and meant to use momentum to fling yourself to the end of the levels, but when the levels are designed to have you go up rather than to the right, it either makes this feature more of an annoyance, barely useful, and when it would be useful, the game just stops working. And yes, I do know this game is a two-player mode where you can strategize on how to actually use a tether mechanic more fluidly, either with a friend or do the speedrunner thing and use your feet. I would love to see that. You know what, I phrased it like a joke, but it would actually be pretty cool to get good at this game and use the controller with your feet. Again, I would love to see it. But Avast, I, being the lonely asshole that I am, have never had the pleasure of experiencing this multiplayer mode. But if there are any content creators who would be down to stream it sometime, my DMs are open, wink wink nudge nudge. But after a while, this tether mechanic becoming so tiring because of how finicky it is, and you wish you could just play it like a normal game, you can't even do that. You basically can't do anything that resembles fun in this game because the top speed of every character is drastically toned down to further focus on the tethering mechanic, and the spin dash was made into a completely useless part of each character's moveset. I mean, just look at it, and the fact that the Sonic Frontiers drop dash is still somehow worse. I would say the move would have better been left scrapped, but it's the reason why we have this raw-ass SBO animation, so I guess I can't complain too hard. And you even have special stages in this game, which is cool, except holy hell, these are the worst in the series, topping Sonic 3D Blast somehow. How did you guys do that? We gotta pull out the Advil for this one. Yeah, I know it was a cool thing to put all the 3D stuff you could in your games back then, but it gets to a damn point. Back to the tether mechanic, because I'm still not done. The main point of the tether system is to gain vertical speed, right? And I've already explained why you can't just slap it into a normal Sonic level because that would suck. There's almost no point in even using it in this game because you're just going up, especially in the more difficult levels where the entire point is just going up. And this causes the characters to sway apart from each other, so I'm not kidding, almost half of this game is one character on the top while the other character is dragging on the bottom, often causing issues with the rubber banding, and it's like, can I just please play a normal game? And again, the worst part about this is you can't even try and play this like a normal Sonic game because of how interlocked this game is with the good old f***ing tethering gimmick, which is somehow simultaneously a very fun mechanic while also not being a very fun mechanic. I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to feel about this. But even despite all this foreign stuff from the rest of the old Genesis Sonic games, Knuckles Chaotix definitely does keep the Sonic influence, but it has some weird changes. Like, the game keeps the ring system, but changes it so it's not completely different in use, it's just more so confusing than it originally was before. So basically, there's a button to make your characters unstuck, which kind of shows that they knew the whole tethering mechanic was already buggy, but whatever, we're past that now. This feature takes 10 rings to use, so you might assume that it becomes unusable once you have one digit of rings, but no, it just sends you into ring debt, which is pretty funny. And if you want, you can just put yourself into unlimited ring debt, which is great for reenacting the life of a liberal arts graduate, speedrun category. Add it in, pussies. And it's not like you even die when getting hit with 0 or negative rings. All that happens is you lose your partner for like a minute until it respawns, so if you really have the patience, you will probably never die in this game. But I do believe that in and of itself, while these ideas do have more than their fair share of flaws, if done right, the game could actually be pretty fun and well designed, which despite the fact that these levels are very flawed, I will say there are many good stages here. Many is cutting it. I would say that some of the levels here hold up to the more difficult stages in Sonic 1 and 2, and while comparing them to the more fondly remembered levels in those games, they do look kinda I would still say that Knuckles Chaotix does kind of hold up to the big classic Sonic games, up with Sonic 2 and 3. And yes, I kind of, not really, do kind of mean that. Maybe just swipe it aside a bit more. Let's keep a good distance here. But you know all the nice things I've said about this game, such as the many enjoyable and well-designed levels put into this game, despite the fact that there is a big caveat there, and how each new playthrough of the game is sprinkled up with the whole character swapping mechanic. Well, throw out all this because there is a required feature in this game that just absolutely ruins all of this. I'm not kidding. To even play a level here, you need to go into this place from the hub called the Combi Catcher, which makes you select from a roulette to see which character you get to play as and which level. This completely ruins the game. The game is structured into 5 zones with 5 acts in each, which is way damn too much already, but I guess they realized it would be boring as hell to have to play 5 levels in a row using the same art style and assets, so they did the smart thing, and that was to instead mix up the levels a little bit, add a roulette. The smart thing. But even with this, the thing is, it would have been a cute feature if you played the levels out of order, but no, they had to ruin it with the dumbass random chance thing. But this system also harms the game even more than just making it an annoyance. It also removes any challenge from the game possible, as all the levels have to be designed with the same difficulty in mind. So instead of going from relatively easy to relatively hard, you know, like a normal game, it just goes in the middle the whole time, so it makes you feel like you're playing different levels with the same designs the whole time, which, I'll tell you what, it's f***ing boring. Yeah, this feature just sucks, man. I normally don't go as far as to say this, but this one feature, when on paper, seems just inadequate, but really brings the game down for me to a point where I would not recommend you try to beat this game without cheats nowadays. It really sucks that much. This game definitely stands apart from the rest of the classic Sonic games because it's really the only game in the main platforming series that tries to do something different from the main Sonic gameplay. And yes, I do think this is cool because it does expand the Sonic universe, and it shows how you can design a platformer revolving around a character like Knuckles, where he climbs up, so levels are designed by going up rather than right. But I would be lying if I said this game was one of the best out there, because it is absolutely not. And I really just think one of the main issues here is that compared to the other Genesis games, this game is just really clunky. Like, I don't even know exactly how to explain this, but just by how this game looks, you can already tell it doesn't have the same quality as the actual Sonic games, and everything from the movement to the animations and even the menus just don't feel as good, nor like they fit with the other games. Disregard SB, of course, I love that guy. But I do think that many of this game's flaws aren't even created by the levels in the game itself, but rather the random factors this game throws in, especially the whole lottery system. But I could easily see this game going down the Project 06 or Unleashed recompiled route and having the general fan consensus of this game completely change with a bunch of added quality of life improvements, specifically getting rid of that damn roulette wheel. Jesus Christ. I mean, this has already happened with some of the other classic Sonic games, like the fan 16-bit remake of Triple Trouble, hey, remember Bit's discussion from earlier? Or even the remaster of Sonic 3D Blast done by the game's original director, so yeah, I could see this game being viewed much higher if it were given this treatment. Not that I would be doing anything like that anyway. Do you think that I know the first thing about game development? I mean, for fuck's sake, I'm editing this on a Mac. But would I recommend you play this game today? What do you think? I mean, I think it would be cool to hunt down the actual hardware for this game and play it that way and endure the eBay prices, except never mind, holy hell, hopefully I'll get lucky at a thrift store or something someday. But I think if you're a Sonic fan, especially of the original Genesis games, and this game is at least worth a crack on an emulator, but would I say you should go out of your way to beat this game as intended with no level skipping or random character picks? Absolutely not. Although, compared to that liberal arts degree, anything is better.